Hello, I am Boyd Charrington. Today I'd like to talk to you about FastReporter 3, our newest service offering in our FastReporter lineup. First, we'll talk about the downloading of FastReporter 3. We'll discuss the types of accounts. We'll talk about the differences in those accounts and the advantages or disadvantages depending on what you want to accomplish. Next, we'll go into a hands-on portion and we'll go through some basic navigation skills, and we will finally work with some files, and I'll show you Validator, one of the exciting new additions to FastReporter 3. To begin with, type in www.exfo.com into your browser. You'll see a screen that pops up, which is the exfo.com site. Hover over Support, and download software will appear as an option where you can go and decide where you want to download to, as shown on this next slide. Here in the download area, you can see that I've selected PC software, so I want to install it on my PC versus one of our test sets. So I'll click on the download area. A screen will come up looking like this, and you can select the download. So you can get a 64-bit version or 32-bit version depending on what type of computer you have. Incidentally, the 32-bit will work on either, whereas the 64-bit needs a 64-bit computer. You'll be asked to log in, so you'll put in your email address and put in your password. If you don't have an account, you can register here. If you've forgotten your password, you can also get a link to renew your password. Once FastReporter 3 has downloaded, you can decide where you want it to be stored on your computer. It comes in as a zip file, so you can unzip it and put it where you want on your computer storage. Once it's selected and downloaded, you may see this screen. As you scroll down here, you would see a chart that shows the capability of each of the 3 FastReporter versions. This is that chart, so you can see the basic version and its capabilities. The full version, whether it be on your computer or on a USB dongle. You can see there's a difference mainly with the amount of files that you can process, different templates and so forth, so you'd want to read through this. And next you will see a comparison between our previous version, FastReporter 2, and the new FastReporter 3. A couple of the big items here is free trial now lasts 90 days instead of 30, so you can get used to it a little more before you purchase. The licensing of it is no longer fixed to a particular PC, but it is user-based, so it can be accessed on any computer that you install it on via your username and password. It also is tied to the TestFlow server, access through the TestFlow server, so your subscription is through TestFlow. Job management you can access through TestFlow. Some very nice options here, and TestFlow will be our next item coming out, next software coming out that you will want to look into. This is the icon that you will see when you open up FastReporter 3. You'll want to select one of the 3 options depending on what you have decided on. The 90-day trial gives you full access for the 90 days. After the 90 days, it becomes that basic version with limited capabilities. If you have purchased it, you'll log on to your existing account, and once the 90 days are up, you would start FastReporter 3 in basic mode, which is free with that limited use. So now let's go to our hands-on portion, and you'll be able to see how FastReporter works. Okay, so I have opened up my FastReporter program here. A few things to point out to begin with. Obviously, it shows FastReporter 3. It also, up in the top right-hand corner here, shows who I am or who has accessed it, whose account I am in under, the basis of my account, so Exfo training. And then it shows that I'm using the Plus trial, so you'll be able to see here that I do have full capability with this Plus trial for the 90 days. Now that counts down from the 90 days for you to use it. After the 90 days, you go into that basic version, and what it does is restricts you according to that table for what you can actually do with it. So going back here, if I look at File, here I can start a new project. I can set up an IOLM configuration. So IOLM, our Intelligent Optical Link Mapper. If you're not familiar with that, that's what the acronym stands for. I can open a project I've already been working on. I can open a file that's on my computer. So if we've done some testing, we've saved those files, whatever type they happen to be, they're compatible with FastReporter. Here's where I can go to and search my computer for those files. We have included some sample files. So if I go into the sample files section here, you can see that for about everything that this will do, I can see the different types of files. So chromatic dispersion, fiber inspection probe, IOLM, and so on. The different types of files that are compatible with FastReporter. I'm going to cancel that for now. Go back to File and Open. I can save a project as I've been working on, or I can save files. It's grayed out right now. You can see anything that's in black is an availability, or if it's in gray, that means I don't have any files open, so I can't do anything saving selected files. Same with the Save As. I can give it a name here. I can import a project that maybe somebody else has been working on and sent to me. Options. Let's look at that. Here is where I can set the language of the system I'm using, the type of applications, and the supported measurements for it. So you can see the check marks are telling me what the system's capable of doing. An important part about this, on display, the display tab, I can set the time for the machine. Expo Connect, if you're familiar with that, here is where I can have Expo Connect show up on the taskbar. And you can see the different options. The big one here is, here's where I can set my distance units. So kilometers, miles, kilofeet, meters, feet, depending on where you're at, how the engineers or yourself, if you're an engineer, want to see those files displayed. And then here, display web page in graphics. You can see this is a link to expo.com FastReporter. That's what brought up this page here that you can see with FastReporter and so forth. Now you could change that to anything you want. You could make that Google, Yahoo, whatever you'd like it to be. You can make it your home page or your web page for the company you're working for. Okay. If you ever change things and it's showing up weird, here we can go back to default settings. So it'll take it right back to what you see right now. I'm going to cancel that. I'm not going to make any changes. And support, there's a big one. If you have questions, here's where you can learn about FastReporter and activate the product. So product activation, copyright information. You can get in help here. You can go in the help screen. You can read the user guide. So that's a very good thing to have available. You can go read the user guide and learn how to do everything FastReporter will do. Here we install the FastReporter dongle, so you can buy it on a dongle and plug it from one computer to another with a certain amount of licenses. Check for updates if you want to make sure you have the most recent version of FastReporter. As bugs are found, as in any software program, you would be able to come in here and see if something's changed, so some of those bugs might have been overcome. And again, technical support, another very useful option. If you can't find it here on the help, then you may want to go to technical support. This will give you a link back to our technical support folks that will answer questions for you. All right, here where I'm on the home screen, so I can see some different options, some grayed out, some ready to go. I don't have any files up here, so that's going to not populate a lot of these. The check marks here for show and hide windows. If I'm not interested in any of the identifiers, I could uncheck identifiers and then it disappears from the window over here on the right. Check it, bring it in, matched files. You can see that, results, measurements. So depending on what you want to show up in your windows. Now any of these windows could be drug larger or smaller, so I can view or have a more detailed view of any one of the windows, or actually remove it if I don't want to look at it. These windows can also be drug out to a second screen. So if you're plugged into a computer or laptop that has a extended screen, you can drag these windows out to that if you want to work with two different screens. Many people like to do that also. While we're looking at this portion here on your results, you can see I can select that have it disappear if I'd like, have it appear. The only thing we're seeing in results right now is the identification. We aren't able to see any of the thresholds, the events, or anything because there's no files up here to look at. So you'll see this change as we open files. Grayed out to the right of that are tools. We can select auto documentation, which you can use a reference file and change all of the files that are open to match as far as the identifier documentation if they've been recorded incorrectly. Duplicate measurements, if you happen to have some files that shouldn't be there mingled in and they're the same test, but it is being used twice, you can check for that happening. Measurement sorting, apply file sorting. That's how you can adjust how they sort on the graphics when you open them up over here. The graphics button here, the little icon, you can see I can bring in the graphics or remove them. And then on settings, here is where, as I'm working on a project, one of the places I can go in and I can put in the title, the author, the company, customer, so forth. And it will also, if you've built a template of a project, it would show up here what template you're using. Notice here I can check or uncheck display the template file name in the title bar. So some of the options here for identifiers. So now the windows, as I open a file, you'll see it'll appear here in the graphic. I'll bring that back in for the time being, the FastReporter browser page. On the right over here, here's where we have our measurements. So you'll see that as we look at different types of files, they may have different types of measurement at different frequencies, for example. The identifiers used in those files. Matched files, very important. If you have several files here that you're bringing in and you want to make a report that contains, for example, IOM files and FIP files, here we'd make sure the files match. They have to match for identifiers, so that's why we are able to adjust these identifiers. And then the files themselves, when they load, will be over here. Okay, going back up to the top, those of you familiar with FastReporter 2 will know that some of these next options were available if you went into different selections. You could see how to work on the different types of files we can test. Here they've been brought out. So in FastReporter 3, they brought these out to the front, so it makes it much simpler. So OTDR, if I have OTDR files I'm working with, here's all of the different options I have available with OTDR. IOLM, here's all the options for IOLM, FIP, OLTS, and so on. Chromatic dispersion, polarization, mode dispersion. So you'll notice they all have different options available. Some many things you can change, some not so many. The other thing that this does now in cloud that's out and available is here is where this is test flow. Allows you to go back and forth between the test flow browser or log out if you'd like to log out of the entire program. Reports, very important. Here's where you have the ability to select which type of report you'd like to create and whether you want the format to be PDF or Excel. And here we see the setup, so you can deal with the reports according to how you want to deal with them. Import or export files, and then the different application reports, OTDR, OLTS, IOLM, FIP. So a lot of acronyms here, but if you're looking at FastReporter 3, you probably know what all these acronyms are. If you don't know what these acronyms are, we have on the expo.com, we have an animated glossary. So you can go into the animated glossary and you can learn a lot of this information. Okay, so with that, what I'd like to do now is open up a sample file. I'm going to keep this simple at first. So we're going to open, and you can see I'm going into my sample files. And first off, I want to look at an OTDR file. So I'll just go grab one here at random. So the OTDR sample file I have selected is open now, and you can see that it's populated in this files window. You also can see the graphic of the trace that I've opened. And notice up here it went to the OTDR tab, and The options here are highlighted, so in colors, so you know I have an OTDR file open, and all of the capabilities, all of the management I can do of this file are within this bar now here under OTDR. The other thing that happened was my identification populated for the identification that was put in at the time of the test. Notice this when test was taken clear back in 2007. And they kept it pretty simple here, the cable ID and fiber ID. So proof here that you can open up old files that were taken long before FastReporter 3 came out. It shows the model of the test unit and the calibration date, so the test unit had been recalibrated. Under summary, I can look and I can see the different information. So a summary of the test that was taken, the trace that was taken, the wavelengths that it was taken at. Here you can see there was 3 wavelengths, 1310, 1550, and 1625. And then all of the test settings that were used. Range, it was set at a 50-kilometer range, 1 microsecond pulse, 45-second test. It wasn't taken with a high resolution. Also, under the test settings, we see the index of refraction of the different wavelengths, the Rayleigh backscatter of the fiber, helix factor, which is a whole nother class, splice detection threshold, reflection detection threshold, and end of fiber detection threshold, fiber core size, and so forth. So there's all of the information from the test that are contained in here. Thresholds shows me all of the thresholds at the different wavelengths that were applied to this test to determine if it was going to pass or if it was going to fail. And the event table, now each one of these different events can be displayed here. I can drag this open so we can see it a little better. We maybe not need to see the graphic near as much as we need to see what thresholds were applied, or the events to the thresholds. You can see this particular fiber passed at 1310 and 1550 but failed at 1625. So here's where I would want to go through my different wavelengths and discover why. And know from this trace that this happens to be a macro band out here at event 5. If I scroll over to event 5, you can see that at 1625 it failed because of the amount of loss, which indicates a macro band when these are substantially different. Okay, so I can look at all my events. If I want to go to a particular event, I see something up here. If I wanted to go to event 2, I can click on event 2 and the event table is going to shift back to event 2 and highlight event 2 and so on. So event 4 and clear down to event 7 on this particular trace. Then the markers, if I want to work with the markers, I can adjust these markers where I want them in order to look at a particular point for my 4-point loss, 2-point section attenuation, and so on. Okay, so pretty simple here. If I want to make a report of this, so I have this highlighted. If I want to make a report of this test, I can come in here and select report. Doesn't look like a simple OTDR test is contained in one of those reports, so I can go through and select a different report. I can look up here and I can find a report that applies just to OTDR, nothing else. Here is a simple one, OTDR. I'll select that. I can decide if I want that in a PDF format or Excel again. And you can see there's some options here for identifiers and the sorting or setting the file name. And I want this in a PDF this time, so I'm going to click OK. It says I've used that file name once before. That's okay, so I could have changed it and it would save it separately from the last time I tested it. Now we see here is the report, the PDF report that was generated from that test. We see a copy of the trace. We see all of the information for events, where the markers were placed, the different measurements that we're taking, pass-fail thresholds that were applied to it, and so on. And you can see that for every wavelength, all 3 wavelengths. And you can see down here on the 1625 report that it shows that at that one event, event 4 I believe it was, that it failed and it's highlighted in red. So same type of information can be provided if you were to do a report in Excel, but I use the PDF for this training. Okay. If I've done everything I wanted to do with that one, I could delete it. But let's take for instance that I want to include a FIP test that was taken with this. So what I would do is I would come in here and I'll go to my sample files again. I'll go find a sample file from my FIP, and you can see we could include multi-fiber connectors for our MPOs, MPTs, or I can include single fiber connectors. So I'll just grab any one of these. Let's get one that passed. It's always nice to see things pass. And I'm going to open that file. It's now opening, and I can see now that I have two different files here. I have an OTDR file and an FIP file. Now if I want to match these, what's important is to make sure that they match. And you can see here, if I go down to the Match Files tab, that my OTDR and my FIP don't match. So let's go see why. Here I'm in my OTDR. I'll go back to Files, excuse me. I'm in my OTDR trace, and I can see it was given a cable ID of 0005, fiber ID of 0022. Okay, so these need to match. Those identifiers need to match in order for this to work, for just a report that contains both. So we can see here the cable ID and the fiber ID are different. All right. So what I want to do is I want to keep this simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my fiber ID, and I'm going to change this to fiber ID 1. Now you could change that to anything you want, but it has to match OTDR. So keeping it simple, these don't match. I'm going to backspace that out, and now I'm going to change it to fiber ID 1. So now I can see that my files do match with my OTDR and my FIP. I'm going to go back to the Files tab. Both are highlighted, so I'll go up and select what type of report. For this training, I'll do the FIP report. And I'll use a recent template here if I wanted to go through all the templates. Here you see everything that comes as availability on the program, or anything that you have built. I use the OTDR FIP. You can see it's up here in my recent tabs. I'm going to give this a different file name. I'm going to call this one training test. Click OK. Looks like I've used that before. And so it should go in and build a report for me now. And again, it's open on my other screen. I'll go select it off my other screen so you can see it. And here's my report now, and it includes the FIP images, so the pictures of this really did pass when we tested at one of these points, and all of the different tests at 1310, 1550, 1625, all included in the same PDF report. So very, very nice for the capabilities here. Now I want to do the same thing with an IOLM, just so you can see that I can make it work twice. Highlight them both and click remove, and it's going to remove these from the current project I'm working on. I'm not going to save it. I made some changes, so I'm not going to save it. No to all. And I'll go back to my sample files, open sample files, and I'll pick an IOLM. Which one do we want? Let's pick one that's very similar to the last one we did, only now tested with IOLM. So here we see the file is opened, and notice it didn't pass. This file didn't pass, or this trace didn't pass, because there's a macro bend in it. You can see it's highlighted in red. So maybe out here somewhere there's a problem, a macro bend. Macro bends usually happen where people touch the fiber. So in a fiber panel or a splice case, for example. Okay, so I want to include in this test, notice up here again, now we're on the IOLM tab and the different capabilities within IOLM. A lot of different types of capabilities here. I'm going to go back into my sample files, and I'm going to again find a sample of test, or the fiber inspection probe, FIP test. And I'll just grab one of these at random. Now it's opened up. You can see here, again, we got to make those identifiers match. This is an easy one. It's already been changed to fiber 1. For simplicity, I'm going to change this into fiber 1. Okay, once again, if I come down here, I can see that my IOLM and my FIP. Now the magic of this program is that I'm just doing this with one file, with one IOLM, one FIP. But with batch processing, you can do this with many hundreds of different files. You can go in and make these match so that you have a detailed report that shows everything that was tested on a cable. So once again, I've highlighted both of them. I will go up here to PDF, and I want a report this time. It's in my recent template of IOLM with the FIP. I'm going to click on that, and I didn't change the file name, so it says I'm overwriting something. That's okay. Now it's going to open up a PDF report, and you can see in this PDF report I've got all the information, the testing for my FIP, and I've got the IOLM trace, and they're combined. So I can prove that this fiber passed, it was clean, and the IOLM test here with its results. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is get a little bit more complex here. I'm going to remove these files. Now what I would like to do is go back and open up a few more files. This time I'm not going to use any of the sample files. I'm going to use some files from testing that I have here on my computer. Look for these. I've got them in FastReporter 3 files. And what I want to do is select all of these files. So I got 5 of them here. And I'm going to open all 5 of them at the same time. So you can see I have all 5 files open. There's a lot of different things going on. Some passed, some failed according to the pass-fail thresholds that were applied when they were tested. If I look at my identifiers here, let's go see if any of these match. Doesn't look like they do. They're all file 1, so no matching files. That's okay. They're different tests that were done. I'm going to select one of these at a time, and I can look at the graphic of that. I can come into the graphics, and just as we did with the OTDR, I can click on an event, and it's going to highlight the event, show me what happened on that event. Here we see the footage. It's in kilometers here, so just under half a kilometer to this point of the fiber, a little shorter one than we saw before. Notice A for the start of the fiber, B for the end of the fiber. They're using a launch bag here. At this end they were not. But I can go through and I can look at all these. Green means pass, red means fail. So, and if it's in blue here, it means it really wasn't able to do a test because it's a non-terminated fiber. You have to have it terminated in order to see the validity of it. I can see splices, I can see connectors, and so forth. So I got all the information here, but now it's in a graphic. And as you may or may not know, in IOLM it uses a variety of different wavelengths that are available on the OTDR. It's going to use different pulse widths in order to get a more concise view of just exactly what's going on this fiber. Okay, so what I'd like to do, I don't need to make these match. They're different tests. I can go through and just look at them, see what thresholds were applied, get a summary of what happened within the fiber and so forth. Remember, green's good, red's bad according to the pass-fail thresholds. And you can see I can see all the different fiber names and so forth. But what I'd like to do is use my validator on this now. So what validator is going to do, if I come up here to the validator tab, I can select a validation template, so, or I can define my own. So here's one I built earlier. Let's go into define, and you can see what the capabilities are within define. Here I can set my project name. Now what this is going to do is it's going to require all of these files that I have open over here on the right to pass or fail, or it will actually give me a report as to what is and isn't in the test that may or may not have should have been. So we know it's not an OTDR test, so I can uncheck OTDR. I don't want it to show me any OTDRs. If I had a file over here that I know is just exactly as I want it to appear, I could go in here and I could pick that file and make it my reference file. So everyone else would have to comply with what its information was. Notice right here, check for duplicate measurements. So if I have 5 fibers here that were tested, and I suspect that for whatever reason, 2 of these are the exact same test, it just shows up twice, then I can check and see if that's the case. I'm going to keep this simple and not change anything else. So OTDR is removed from it. It's IOLM, and save. I can save as. I could give this a name. Give it something simple like my initials. Click OK. And now you can see up here the current validator template that's going to apply to it is OK. I'm going to select all of my files again. And I'm going to start the validator. So what it should do now is it should go into all of these files and build a report as to what's right or wrong. Now I did put a whole lot of information in here, so it's going to make it pass a lot of information. Open up on my second screen, bring that up here where you can see it, and you can see that it went through and it's looking. Where did it fail? Well, in the identification, the current value says NBN cleanup. It was expected to be empty because I didn't put anything in that parameter. But it can go through and it can make sure that all of the files have what you would like to see in the file. So if this test were done by someone, but I know that there's inaccuracies in it, I could do this validation error report or validator error report, and I could send it to the person that did the testing. And they can look at each one of the files and see what it should have contained, but it did not contain, or maybe it contained something different. So very, very nice in order to make sure that the test is being done properly and all the identifiers are proper for the way you'd like to read them. So that's about it. I can import a validation test. I can export, obviously delete, view and edit past reports, select a past report. So more than one way to do things here. You can see there's several in here. So that's about it with our display of FastReporter 3. That is the end of our training on the new FastReporter. I hope this has been informative for you. Please visit exfo.com for more presentations on other technologies and training on fiber optic test equipment and software. We also provide many options for e-learning as well as on-site training, which will include hands-on if you so desire.